All right, welcome back, everybody. Here we are, session 4, lesson 1 of the communication sessions, where we've been talking about best ways to communicate in the key relationships in our lives. Communication, one writer says it this way: communication is the relationship. It's not for a good relationship you got to have great communication. Communication really is the relationship, right? That space between the two of you, whether it's a work relationship, great friends, or coworkers, or boss employee, in a family. The communication really is the relationship. And so we've been talking about relationships and communication and the best way to communicate and some how-tos in communication. I hope you're getting something out of that. You can go back and listen to our previous sessions here on catch.me/GatewayVictory. Find the collection there, or contact us and we can get you there. So welcome. Thank you for joining us, whether you're doing that through the web and online tonight or whether you're here in the living room. Yay. We're going to have a good time. All right, let's jump in this evening. So we're going to talk about really, another phrase for what we're talking about tonight is conflict resolution. What to do in areas of conflict. Last time we talked quite a bit about tense conversations, like those conversations where we're really tensing up and how to avoid conflict. When you're in conflict, all right, when it's like, it's too late to avoid conflict and you're in it, this is the session that we're going to be talking about tonight. And so those areas of conflict, those topics can come to mind that it's going to create some conflict if you bring it up. You're going to be better armed now. And so titled this session, Getting Where You Want to Go in Communication, because a lot of times conflict does not get us where we want to go. And so how to use conflict to get there, how to understand it a little bit better, how to understand ourselves a little bit better, and be better people for the people that we love and that we cherish in our lives. I got a little quote up there for you, right first of all on the worksheet by Robert Quillen. Discussion is an exchange of knowledge. Argument, an exchange of ignorance. Right? So next time you're really in a fight and you don't care how it goes, just pull that one out. You're just an exchange in ignorance. Yeah, all the best with that. All right, so we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about communication and best ways in conflict. All right. Let's start by this idea here, just to kind of set the stage tonight. We approach conflict in the way, and here's your first blank. We approach conflict in the way that it's been modeled to us. All right, we're not born into this world with a blueprint of how to argue and how to fight and what to do in times of tense communication. We're not born in the world that way. It's modeled to us, mostly and probably most emphatically through our parents. Isn't that right? Through the different role models, but through parents is a huge one. This causes us to have deeply ingrained habits of how to handle these intense conversations we learn from our parents and other role models. What a great thing to do for husbands and wives can do this. What a great thing to do is say, how I learned to fight was from my dad or my mom or my, my stepdad, or, this is what it was like for me growing up. This is what I witnessed, It's a great conversation to have so you know where you're both coming from. Mara and I, when we talk about those kinds of things, we kind of laugh because I think I've shared it a little bit here, how we've come from very different backgrounds in the way that we would dialogue. My family would love to debate and push ideas back and forth and just kind of talk about them and just kind of have at it. There's a fair amount of sarcasm there. We're going to talk about that tonight. There was a fair amount of, maybe even criticism and kind of pushing back on different ideas and that sort of thing. Mara's family, completely opposite. They just would not argue about anything. If as kids, and she has 2 brothers, so if the 3 of them were like arguing, down in the basement or something as they were playing and kind of like an argument happens or whatever, as I understand it, not being there, but as I understand it, their dad would walk downstairs and discipline them all, because there should never be an argument. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. There should never be an argument. It's very different ways of growing up. And of course, when we come together, we're bringing that into, bringing those very different styles into our relationship. And so that can be a real eye opener just to sit down and talk about, how you've modeled, who you modeled after. Check this next statement out. This is really why we're digging into this tonight. The quality of our relationships will eventually be determined by the skills with which you handle conflict. All right. If you're in someone's life long enough, to any degree of depth in somebody else's life, their conflict is going to ensue. Because you've got 2 very different people, 2 very different perspectives, whether it's your boss or coworker, or friends or family or whatever, or spouse. It's just a matter of time before a conflict's going to ensue, right? And you guys know this. You've lived long enough to know this. that the way that you resolve that conflict eventually, hopefully same day, maybe next day, maybe 48 hours, maybe 3 weeks. Hopefully you're not one of those with people with like a decade-long argument on your shoulders. But the way that you resolve that conflict, okay, is going to determine the quality of that relationship. Isn't that right? I mean, it's not, the quality of your relationship over time is not going to be based on your greatest times together. It's going to be based on how you deal with those things that are difficult. All right? And so the quality, just to state that again, the quality of your relationships will eventually, over time, they will be determined by the skills with which you handle conflict. Because there will be differences, there will be arguments. You're starting a new job, your boss seems great, sees things exactly as you do. Guess what? It's just a matter of time before one personality is going to cross another one, before one way of saying things is going to cross the other one, and there's going to be conflict, right? The quality of relationship is going to be determined by how you resolve that. How you resolve that is based on the skills that you learn on how to do it. Whether good things have been modeled to you or bad things, you can still learn the skills. And we're going to group kind of all people together here for a moment, and we're gonna talk about the 4 ways of handling conflict. And you'll probably see yourself in one of these, and maybe more than one. You'll for sure see other people that you know or that you're close with. You'll see them in one of these ways of handling conflict. We're going to group everybody together in these categories, 4 categories of ways of handling conflict. And number 1 is this: fight to win. Any fighters in the room? I'm just not going to disagree with you if you are, that's all. Any fighters in the room? So fight to win. All right, this is where you seek to dominate the other person. It's kind of like your way or the highway, all right? This is the I win, you lose position. The I win, you lose position. Like really all you care about is winning and get your own point of view across, getting what you want out of the deal, out of the situation. If you want another phrase, it's basically the approach is this: I'm right and you're wrong. I'm right. Maybe you've had a boss like that, Maybe you've had somebody, don't say anything. Maybe you've had somebody in your life, that is just convinced that no matter what it is, they're right. I mean, that's their default, right? This is someone that fights to win, all right? It's a way of handling conflict. In this way of handling conflict, and as you can see, it's not a very healthy way of handling conflict. In this way of handling conflict, check this out. Personal relationships take second place to the person's need to win. Okay? Personal relationships take second place to the need to win. In other words, it doesn't matter about the quality of our relationship right now. I just want to be right, and I want you to know that I'm right. I want other people to know that I'm right, and I just want you to admit that I'm right. Right? I'm right. Right? Thank you. All right. So fight to win. Not a very healthy conflict style or way of handling conflict, but I'm sure, on occasion we've all defaulted there. Some people, it is their default, right? It is the direction that they go. Ways of handling conflict number 2. This is sort of the opposite in a lot of ways, and it's to withdraw. All right? Ways of handling conflict number 2, withdraw. This says, and you've got quite a bit to write here in this blank, but this says, I'm uncomfortable, so I'm getting out. Right? I'm uncomfortable in this conversation, so I'll get out. This is where as soon as something escalates a little bit, their body posture will often change. If they're reading a book, it'll go up in front of their face, If they're standing kind of in the same room or whatever, they're going to turn to go out. They just, they're going to withdraw. They're going to get out. And why? Because they're uncomfortable. If left unchecked, this way of handling conflict, you can write this down in your margin somewhere. It's really the silent treatment is what it is, right? The person thinks differently than what they're letting on, but they're not telling you. They're just being quiet. More than fight, I will withdraw, right? This is one of the things that I'll find myself doing, and I kind of pat myself on the back about it. And if there's any other withdrawers in the room, you kind of understand this as well. It's kind of like, it's almost like a self-righteous sort of like, I don't agree, but I'm not going to put my point of view out there to be talked about anymore. And so if you're interested in what I have to think, you can ask me sometime later. Because you're withdrawing, right? Because and it has this sort of like, this is a good way to be to it, because at least I'm not fighting, or I'm not yelling, or I'm not going to hurt somebody, or, so we withdraw. And maybe it is good, better than fighting in some respects, maybe the immediate, but you drag that out over long term, and you're driving somebody else crazy if you're just always withdrawing and not engaging in a conversation, right? Because you have an opinion, and things need to be said, and things need to be hashed out. So it's a way of handling conflict. This would be even in some styles it would be passive aggressive, right? I'm just not going to talk to you because you're making me feel uncomfortable. So I'm just not going to go there with you. And really passive aggressiveness at its extreme is just as damaging to the other person as screaming at them or yelling them. Come on now, isn't that right? A passive aggressive, withdrawing person is as abusive, as damaging, in very different ways psychologically, but as damaging. I'm going to propose that anyway. That as someone that fights to win all the time, right? And that has to have their own way and that is abusive about it. All right, number 3. This one often kind of gets overlooked, and so I'm glad that we're surfacing it tonight. 4 ways of handling conflict. Number 3 is to yield. And in any great relationship, there's a measure of yielding that you do, and we're gonna talk about that when we talk about best ways to handle conflict. But what I'm talking about here is an unhealthy yielding. All right, so fighting to win is unhealthy. Withdrawing is unhealthy. Yielding all the time is unhealthy. All right. So if you're with a friend or a spouse or a boss or whatever in a family scenario with someone that's quite demanding, quite domineering, quite fight to win style, and you're just kind of the one that's just kind of always like, yeah, whatever you want, honey, okay, fine, if that's what you want, that's the way that I'll do it, then okay, fine, that's great. Okay, so you're not withdrawing in terms of like hiding yourself and withdrawing from the relationship, but you're not bringing forward the fullness of what you think and what you feel in your heart, and you're always yielding. You end up being the doormat, right? You end up being the one that's always going back. I want to jump back to withdraw here. I just saw that I missed the blank. The withdrawing person, personal relationships take second place to the desire to avoid discomfort. Okay, the withdrawing, the relationships take second place to the desire to avoid discomfort. When you fight to win, the personal relationship takes second place to the need to win. When you withdraw, the personal relationships take second place to the desire to avoid discomfort. You see where this is going? To yield, all right, this is when you go along grudgingly. You might have smiles on the outside, but on the inside you're like, why does it always have to be their way? When do I get to say my piece? Some marriages go on year over year over year like this, and it's just like this this thing that's ready to explode, because at some point, whether it's a boss or a friend or something, at some point the person that's always yielding is going to feel very, very good, right? Pushed to the degree that they just can't handle it anymore, and they're looking for other solutions. All right, so this is when you go along grudgingly. It's avoiding any kind of confrontation. It's like, whatever you want, okay, sure. If that's the way that you want it, absolutely, right? You're always yielding, not very healthy. In this, the personal relationship takes second place to feeling safe. Okay, the personal relationship takes second place to feeling safe. You'd rather not. You'd rather avoid the confrontation, so you yield. What you're doing there is you're saying, you know what? Me feeling safe, avoiding this discomfort, me feeling safe is more important than this personal relationship. All right? Last one. And this is the one that we're all aiming for. And we're all taking our tendencies for 1, 2, and 3. And we're saying, Jesus, help us, to do this. The number 4 is the way that we want to be in every conflict situation. And listen, just the same way that we have triggers that make us 1, 2, or 3, right? We can have habits ingrained in us that cause us to go to number 4. And here it is. Number 4 is to lovingly resolve. Lovingly resolve. Four ways of handling conflict. Number 4, lovingly resolve. This is when you commit to sensitive dialogue. You commit to it. Not in the situation, but prior to the situation. You commit to that person. You commit to God that no matter who of his people that you're relating to on the earth, that you are going to commit to sensitive dialogue, right? It's a pre-commitment in your marriage that we are going to commit to sensitive dialogue. I've always been amazed about how in the home, The different, we work with a lot of different couples and a lot of different families, and seeing kind of the ins and outs of how different kind of people operate over the years. And it's always amazing to me about how people outside of our homes often receive more respect from us and sensitive dialogue from us than the people within our homes. Hear me out. It's very true. And how many times have you had it kind of like in your home where it's been, it's tense, maybe there's argument going on, maybe there's elevated voices going on, and it's like, I just don't want to talk to you anymore. I've just had enough. Or, it's tense, all right? And the phone rings, right? And we pick up the phone, we're like, hello, how are you? Oh, yes, I'm having a good day. How are you? And it's completely switched, right? And the people outside of our homes are receiving the best of us and the most pleasant side of us, when the people inside of our homes, the people that we love and that we cherish the most, and this would apply to people, and this would work for people that we work with, the people that we are the closest to, how oftentimes we feel that we have the right to kind of let down our guard and just be like whoever we want to be around them, when really it's the people that we love the most that deserve our most respect. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree with that? Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. But we don't just drift to that place. That takes some work. That takes some intentionality behind it. The people that we're closest to deserve the most respectful dialogue. Can you write that down for me? I don't have blanks for that. But if you write that in the margin there, I think that's just a key point in what we're trying to say here. We're talking about ways of handling conflict. This number 4, lovingly resolve, we get to practice the most on the people that we're closest to. The people that we're closest to, they deserve the most respectful dialogue. I've had people to say to me, the people that I'm closest to, they just need to learn to live with me the way that I am. Yeah? As if to be real, gives you the excuse. As if to be authentic or real gives you the excuse to be mean or belligerent or proud. Isn't that right? But that's not true. The people that are closest to us deserve the most respectful dialogue. And we need to move in that direction and shift and change whatever personal things that we need to do that have been modeled to us in that direction. So lovingly resolve. This is when you commit to sensitive dialogue. It requires a special attitude. All right? This attitude, for those of us that are following Jesus, this attitude comes from Jesus because he imitated it. And the Bible says that we should also be of like mind. You can find this in Philippians chapter 2. And it's this. Here's the special attitude. It's humility. If you're going to lovingly resolve an argument, this is the place to start. It requires the special attitude of humility, which means I'm going to put your deal above my deal. That's what humility means. I'm going to put you above me. I'm going to put your deal above my deal. This is, Christians, people that believe in Jesus, we have the moral obligation to do this because Jesus did this in the ultimate way for mankind when it says he did not consider equality with God something that he needed to achieve, something that he needed to grasp, right? But he humbled himself. All right, and so this is like second nature to us as Christians, is to humble ourselves, to put somebody else's deal before our deal. All right, so this special attitude of humility. Guys, this is so rare in the marketplace, in our homes, in our marriages, that it's an extremely valuable commodity to genuinely say, I'm going to be the humble one here. I'm going to choose to put you first, to put your deal above my deal. It requires a very special attitude, humility. It requires a very special perspective, and it's something that the other perspectives don't do, and it's this. It requires prioritizing the relationship. It requires prioritizing the relationship. This is a unique perspective. Most times in an argument, let's just cover, kind of review a little bit. Most times in an argument, we're handling conflict by feeling like, it doesn't matter about the relationship. My need to win and be right or get what I want here is more important. It's easy for us to feel, here's where we default, I don't really care about the relationship so as much as I care about the fact that I'm uncomfortable right now, and I'm just going to withdraw. Isn't that right? We have the tendency, if we're not careful, to say, to heck with the relationship. I'm just not cut out for this kind of confrontation, and I'm just going to yield. I'm just going to whatever they want. I'm just whatever they want. Yeah? When I would play that with Mara, sometimes she would call it the martyr complex, right? Okay, whatever you want then, whatever. You know, because she knows that there's more to my opinion and more to my heart, more to my ideas, and she wants me to engage that. For me just to yield it, or for you just to yield it and just to never engage, it's mean. It's not right. And what that does is it says, you know what, I'd rather have this safe feeling. I'd rather avoid confrontation than I would have a great relationship with you. But is that really what we want to say to the people that we love and we care about the most? It's not, is it? It's not. The ones that we want to have a productive, healthy, ongoing, possibly long-term relationship with at work, or, you know, the friendships they're trying to build, the neighbor, you know, the people that we're trying to draw into the kingdom of God. We don't want to say that. We don't want to say that the relationship is less valuable than these things to us. And so we need to come to the place, we need to come to the point in those relationships and in those points of conflict where we say, we have this unique perspective, where we say, you know what, I'm going to prioritize this relationship over my safety, over my need to be right, over my desire to avoid confrontation, over my need to win. I'm going to prioritize us. It's a very special perspective, and I want to submit to you as well that that's pretty rare. What would a marriage be like if it was built on that? Right? You know, healthy marriages, it surfaces all the time. You know what? The relationship's more important than whatever we were fighting about last night. Let's hug, let's kiss, let's make up, let's do this better next time. Right? I mean, a healthy marriage. Marriages, oftentimes, they'll go into a kind of a series, kind of a season of decline because one or both partners are prioritizing something else other than the relationship in their communication. And so this requires a special attitude and a special perspective. Unique indeed, but something that we can choose. So here is how to take what we've talked about tonight and get to where you want in your dialogue. All right, number one. This is A. Step outside of yourself and be aware of how you're coming across. Okay? Step outside of yourself and be aware of how you're coming across. You ever done that in an argument? It's a new habit. It's a new track that you can run on. So it's getting tense. Learn to be aware of your body posture. Learn to be aware of your tone of voice, of the things that you're saying, of how you're handling that conflict. Are you tempted to fight to win? Are you tempted to withdraw? Are you tempted to yield? What are you tempted to put above the relationship right now, as if it was more important? Because really it's not. And so to be aware of yourself is the first step. And you say, you know what, I'm just emotional, I'm nervous, I kind of get tense, I can't be aware. That's not true. You can be aware. You can learn to be aware of how you're coming across. You can even ask the other person, and you might get some interesting feedback. You ever sit in a job interview? You're tense, you're nervous, maybe there's emotions going on, maybe there's some worry going on, like it's a tense, emotionally involving kind of situation. You've got your own acceptance or your competence on the line, but you are uniquely aware of how you're coming across, isn't that right? You shift your body posture a little bit, a little nuance in your tone of voice. You know, you're doing things intentionally in that moment because you're aware of how you're coming across. So you can be with the people that we love and that we cherish the most. We can be that way. We can be aware. And so this helps us be aware. So what style of handling conflict am I tempted to go in? Am I going in right now? What would this feel like to the other person? All right. So you step outside of yourself and you be aware. We have this unique ability to do this as humans. We can step outside of ourselves, figure out how we're coming across, and then we can learn if we want to make any adjustments. We need to ask this. B, ask, what am I putting ahead of the relationship? You can do this right in the argument. Okay, wait a second. What am I putting ahead of the relationship? Once you've got some perspective on this, once you're aware, once you realize what you're putting ahead of the relationship in that moment, you can repair and resolve. Repair and resolve. And here's how that works. Honey, boss, friend, you know what? I've just realized something. Right? I've just made myself aware of something. I've just become aware of something. Right in the conversation, because it's going to get tense until you both go your separate ways that evening. It's going to get tense until somebody wins and somebody bows. It's going to get tense unless one of you, and make it you, be the first, becomes aware of what's happening and saying, you know what, the relationship that I have with you is more important than what I'm dealing with right now. And what I'm dealing with now is the need to be right. You know, like, just to be honest with you, I just want to be right. And I feel like I am in this situation, right? You can say, you know what, what's bothering me right now is I just really want to avoid this confrontation. I don't like this confrontation. But listen, our relationship is more important than that. All right? You repair and you resolve. You repair and you resolve. You make yourself aware of what's going on and then you address it. And you come across differently. How many of you think you can do that in the next fight that you have? Any couples here want to have a fight right in front of us just so we can kind of critique, just kind of like kind of go through it, go a little bit, just kind of like coach you a little bit, or yeah, no, okay. Well, we'll call that the end of our session here this evening for not the end of our session, but the end of lesson 1. Let's meet back in a few moments for lesson 2. We're gonna have a fight here while we're offline. Okay, let's go. All right.